There we go. Good evening, everyone. We are so excited to have you join us today for Thriving Thursdays. We have a very, very special, I'm so excited today. We had a Mars landing today. We have Dr. Jessica Smedley on with us today. And we just dropped our first official InnoPsych video today, and we'll be premiering it at the end of our show, of our conversation today. So we'll wrap a little bit early. As you can see, Dr. Jessica is also one of our stars in our video tribute today. So I'm so excited. I'm like beaming, guys. Jessica, bear with me. So again, everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for supporting Thriving Thursdays and for these conversations around mental wellness. When I started this Thriving Thursdays last year in April, the goal was really just to create a space where we can have conversations about mental health in healthy ways, right? My goal was to bring on therapists and other mental health professionals and advocates and just sit down and have a conversation about how we have used mental health as a career, but also as a way to empower and support our communities, but how we've used the skills ourselves when we've gone through personal struggles. And so our goal is to make therapists more visible, to make the therapy process less mysterious, right? To break down some of those barriers and really invite you all to participate in therapy, not just as a problem solution, like just to address problems, but also as a prevention, right? To get support and to build skills that support not just you, but the next generation or your families, right? How do you improve communications in your relationships, your partners at work, right? These skills that we teach and we support are so important to our overall functioning. And our goal at InnoPsych, we started with a therapist of color directory, but we're really expanding to more and really, again, showcasing conversations and therapists. So I'm so excited to have Dr. Smedley with us. We have worked on a number of projects together, so I'm excited to have her on. We have a project coming up with the American Psychological Association and another colleague in August, where we'll be talking about social media and Black women and how we've used social media as a way for social justice and resistance and support. So I'm looking forward to getting into that project. Please, as you come in, just share your name and where you're zooming in from. I want to just share, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. So Dr. Smedley is a psychologist. She's based in the DC area. She has a private practice where she provides psychological testing and therapy services. And part of that conversation, we'll hear a little bit more about her practice and her perspective, and really get to hear how she uses her identity as a Black woman to support the clients that she serves. And, you know, I think I've shared with you how I've been able to take my training and really adapt it to meet the needs of my community in a very different way than how I was trained. And that's been really important for me, and a lot of on-the-job training, but it's been so meaningful for the clients that I work and support. So we will get started. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And so I can see your lovely faces. As I mentioned, around 4:40, we will be showing you the full, it's a 2.5 minute video. Some of you may have seen the clip earlier today on social media, and we'll be launching that, the full video at 4:40-ish. So Dr. Jessica, how you doing?
I am great. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to have you on. So as we celebrate Black History Month, we really wanted to focus on Black mental health. I'm always, love any opportunity to be able to talk about Black mental health and mental health in general, but I thought it was really important to focus on that, especially thinking about coming off of 2020 and 2020
Yes.
plus, right? That, mental health has really been on the front street because people have experienced trauma, have experienced complicated grief and loss, economic decline. I mean, there's been so many things that I think for the first time, I think we're already in this trend where people of color and Black folks were starting to think about mental health and being open to it, particularly among the younger generation. But I think the recent events have, and then the racial injustice, I think it's just made people more open to it because this is traumatic. And so I think people are being more open around that. So I want to hear a little bit about you. I always love to hear a little bit about my guests and what led them into the journey of being a mental health professional, and for you, a psychologist. And I just want to give a shout out because I know your mom's on the line, and I know I had my mom on a couple of weeks ago, so everyone got to meet her. So moms, we love you. So
Yes.
any moms here, we love you guys, and we love your support. But I'd love to hear from you. Share a little bit about what inspired you to become a psychologist. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me. And I just want to 10 seconds to congratulate you again, Boston, City of Boston Innovator of the Year.
Thank you.
The project that we have launching today, happy to be a part of that and excited to present with you this summer at APA. So I celebrate you as well. And thank you for bringing me under your wing. And hi, Mom.
Right.
So when I think about psychology and becoming a psychologist, it wasn't necessarily a linear decision or projection. I started off sort of on the pre-med track. I knew that I wanted to go into a helping field, but come from a community where, mental health wasn't really talked about. It wasn't really discussed. So looking back, don't have any recollection of, oh, this is a therapist from my neighborhood or a psychologist from my neighborhood. So it wasn't until undergrad where I started taking, I think it was a neuroscience class and then some research classes. And I really just got fascinated with the brain and human behavior and development, and continued on to a master's program where I got my MFT first. And then from there decided, okay, there is a whole world out there. And as a Black person, I need to be a part of this and contribute back to the community. So that's
great.
The short version.
Great. Well, I didn't know you had an MFT. So I learned all new things about myself. And, part of the reason that I ask about your journey, because one of the things we're really starting to talk about is how do we extend that pipeline? Psychologists, Black psychologists make up about 4% of all psychologists in the US, right? Very, very small minority. And, I've had conversations with college students of color, and many of them had said, my parents have discouraged me from going into the field because, mental health doesn't exist. It's not, you're not going to be successful, like all these messages. And so I want people, if you're a parent, if you are a sibling, and like really trying to encourage people to explore this field as a viable career option. And particularly, this is going to be trending for the next, it's always trending, but more so for people of color. And so the opportunity to give back and to see it as a viable career, I just want to highlight that. Absolutely. I actually was speaking with, I was doing a podcast interview this morning, and one of the guests, the host asked kind of my inspiration as well. And similar to you, I didn't meet a psychologist except on TV. There was a guy called Bob Newhart, and that was an inspiration. And I'd go do psychology with my friends. Hope none of them sue me for any harm caused. But you do need, it's helpful to have those models around, and that positive reinforcement that it is a viable career. So thank you for sharing that journey.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your day-to-day. What does a day in the life of Dr. Jessica look like?
That's a great question. I think I try to be intentional and work hard to be in a place to where I'm in charge of my day and how I spend my time. And so now to get ready to say every day is different and that's how I like it is very meaningful. I see clients 4 days a week, different number of clients each of those days. But I also spend time doing student learning evaluations for kids at different charter schools in the area. You mentioned the interview. I've been gaining traction with the media. So had an NBC4 interview this morning.
Nice.
Now here with you, getting into
Nice.
more writing projects lately.
Yeah.
So I have a couple academic pieces pending and then some pieces pending for the general public. So I'm excited about that. So every day is a little bit different. I really conceptualize my role, not just being in the private practice setting, but then also in the community so that people can not only see what I needed to see when I was younger, that role model, but then also to bring education to the community, especially those that are in need of additional resources and support.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to tap into a little bit about the evaluations. One, I work in a school as well, and I know there's some educators on the line, and I know there's some parents. And and actually it's funny because right before this, I was talking to my son's school about an evaluation in terms of, we're seeing some learning challenges and we're trying to figure that out. But one of the things, particularly in our communities, is, trying to understand like what is learning issues and what are racist issues that are showing up as behavior problems in Black boys.
Yes,
right?
call it. Yes.
So let's talk about, so I know parents come in with a lot of hesitation about IEPs or 504 plans. So let's talk a little bit about how do you help folks navigate that and kind of tease out, is this truly behavior learning issues or this is some part of the environment that is being hostile to my child?
Sure. So, Dr. Burrell in the chat. Another Black history moment, the first Black president of Arizona Psych Association. So that's,
awesome.
Just want to
Thank
honor her
you.
real quick.
Great. Hello, Dr. Burrell.
Yes, which you're saying is extremely valid. I think the first thing that I start with is to always empower parents. If it doesn't sound right, if it doesn't seem consistent with your child, absolutely advocate for that. If you don't feel heard, there are often resources in place for parents to get additional support navigating the education system, because it can be intimidating in a room full of educators, professionals, mental health doctors, whoever it is. You still have to remember that you're the expert of your child. So I like to lead there.
I love that. You are the expert of your child. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that we know that there's a difference between when a child is being differentiated, discriminated against, or picked on, and when maybe there are some behavioral challenges that prevent them from being able to focus consistently on a task or, engage in a meaningful way with appropriate social skills or emotional skills. Are they overreacting to something that seems, small? Or are they shutting down and demonstrating some anxiety or depressive symptoms because they're actually not really happy or feeling like they're treated fairly by their teacher? So I think that communication is important, because kids will tell you, whether they say it verbally or whether they behave it, they'll tell you how they're feeling and what's going on.
Great. And tell me a little bit about, so I used to do a lot of psych testing early on in my career. I don't do as much anymore. But I know there are ways in which I also needed to be aware and cognizant of, knowing that the tests were not created or normed in a lot of our population, and how do you navigate your results and interpreting that and giving the results back to families and to schools with a cultural lens in mind.
Very carefully and respectfully. So I think that starts in the way that I go through my clinical interview. I'm very intentional about the way that I gather information, ask questions, and really tease out, I'll give a common example, which is ADHD or oppositional defiant disorder versus a learning disability or depression even. I think that especially children of color are more likely to be labeled with harsher or more extreme diagnoses, and not given the benefit of the doubt of, wow, this child might actually be struggling with some depression and they're acting it out and they can't focus and they're sad all the time because of some things going on at home, versus non-compliant, aggressive, disrespectful. So the labels, we have to be mindful of the labels and language that we use. And then in giving feedback to parents, I really think it's important to be mindful and compassionate in how that's delivered, because no parent wants to hear what's wrong with their child, right? So I think that it's a very delicate process in which we deliver information. And so I try to do that while honoring a child's strengths and the positives that I observe at the same time as we review things that need areas of attention and growth.
Yeah. And I appreciate you talking about the strengths and, one and kind of, the thing that I would often notice, and, part of it is cultural, like your child's success in school is often a reflection of you as a parent. And so if the child is struggling, it can mean like parents can often feel like there's something that I'm doing wrong. So I love that you highlighted that. And so being able to recognize these different types of intelligences. So like there are strengths in this area, but there are some lagging skills or some areas where they need to kind of develop or get more support. It doesn't mean that the child can't learn or can't progress, right? But and that you've done anything wrong as a parent.
Exactly.
Right?
And I also try to offer examples. So if a child missed what we look for as a standardized answer, I also try to offer examples where they didn't answer this vocabulary term, but they could tell me what this meant and what this meant. And so to try to give that flexibility and still offer that other perspective of, yes, standardized testing is needed for these legal purposes, but these are other ways that your child still has a lot of strengths.
Right. Yeah. I remember there was, this was an older WISC, but I was doing an assessment with a Black girl, and one of the questions was, I think it was precise. And she said, "Oh, that's the name of a hair relaxer." I was like, "It sure is."
Great example.
I will never forget that. I was like, "Yep, that," and there goes culture, like,
Yeah.
And if I was not from her culture, I'd be like, she is, she missed the mark. She's, I mean, there could be so many different interpretations that I could have had of her response.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll respond to those. But thank you for your energy and your engagement. So tell me a little bit about, one, I can imagine when you walk into a room, and particularly if you're working with charter schools and parents see that you're the one doing the evaluation, what do you get? Do people smile? Do they like kind of relax when they see it's a Black woman?
Being in DC, it's a whole lot of exhaling and relaxation. Especially when they see Smedley, they don't know what to expect because it's not a clearly, you never know.
Yeah.
And so there have been times when I've done disability evaluations even, and I've had a claimant come into the room and they thought, "Oh, I thought you were going to be an old white man. Thank you, Jesus." And then I think also the same when I go into schools and the parent shows up and they're, "Oh, okay, you're going to be the one. Okay, all right." And
yes,
so
right.
It's a relief in that, okay, at least my child will be seen by someone who at least aligns with our experience.
Right. They'll get a fair shot at this. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I have that reaction quite a bit. And people just are excited. And I think when we see that, and sometimes for us, when we get together, there are a number of us, we don't necessarily see that in context. But again, we think about there are only 4% of psychologists in the US that are Black psychologists, that for families of color to see us walk into a room, it does bring a lot of relief. I see Debbie's like, "Yep." So, all right. So what's next? So let's say, we'll do maybe one more question about your work, and then
Mhm.
we always get a little personal, so that's going to come too. So tell me something that's challenging about the work you're doing, maybe a challenge that you have, and then what's something that's really enjoyable for you in your work.
Sure. Um, I think a challenge can be with doing some of the testing because there are limitations in place right now because of the pandemic. And
Hmm.
so it's required a lot more intention and even some consultation about making sure that you're conceptualizing a case accurately.
Mm.
Um, I've been extremely, I already err on the side of conservatism with my diagnoses, but I've been extremely more cautious now with the pandemic because kids are not only not in a natural learning environment, they're at home. The home situation varies in terms of stability and support and resources. Virtual learning, has
Right.
different implications and barriers, and some students have had to ask the school for support to get decent internet access. So there are all sorts of things at play here.
Mm.
And so while I love doing the work and I'm glad to still have been able to engage with students one-on-one during this time, I would say that is probably a current challenge that I've sort of experienced in the
Okay.
day-to-day of recently.
Okay.
Um,
And are you testing in person?
mhm, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we do
Okay.
have colleagues that are doing some virtual things.
Mhm.
That's not something that I've been set up for.
Okay.
And I don't know if I'm clinically comfortable with it yet, at least not the
Mhm.
testing that I do.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. And what's the joy in your work?
This collaborating with colleagues, celebrating each other, educating the public,
Yeah.
writing, seeing clients in therapy who are having their moments of
Mhm.
breakthroughs or the light bulbs
Mm.
turn on.
Mhm.
So just being, helpful and encouraging people as they align with who they want to be.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. It is such a rewarding. And I know sometimes, clients would say, well, you talk to people about problems all day. Like, how do you find joy in that? And I think the joy is in those moments
Mm.
where they get it. And, I also supervise people who are starting out in the field. And I always say, like, you have to celebrate the little wins. And particularly in school when they're interns, like you may not see the end, you may not see like what growth or
Mm-hmm.
success or whatever it is, but those little wins
Mm-hmm.
are really important. And it's so important to celebrate them because they're huge.
Absolutely.
Any step in that direction to change is really, really positive and huge. And we always want to celebrate that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So one of the things that again, part of, our goal of kind of demystifying therapists is, kind of showcasing that we go through stuff too, and we
Mm-hmm.
use the skills that we teach you too. So
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about a personal struggle that you've encountered, and what did you do to get through it, to navigate the situation?
Sure. So I was thinking about that when you mentioned you were going to ask. So I figured I'd make it relevant to the potential audience.
Mhm.
In thinking about this career, the match was a very daunting, stressful, disappointing process for me. And so the
So yeah.
psychology match,
Okay, good. I was gonna say you have to explain it because there
yeah.
are a lot of people who don't know what that is.
My mom probably remembers the trauma. But the psychology match is similar to how we hear medical students go through residency match. And it's
Mhm.
basically a lottery system. You interview with different placements, and there's an algorithm that tells you where you're going to go. And if you don't get matched, you got to wait a whole year to try again.
Mhm.
And so I went through that cycle 3 times. And
Wow.
so that was definitely stressful, traumatizing,
Hmm.
disappointing. Makes you question, okay, did
Right.
I pick the right journey? Is this the right
Hmm.
timing? What am I not doing? I have all this experience. I had hours upon hours upon hours. came in with the MFT. So I thought I did all the right things.
Right.
So what am I doing wrong? So I think in terms of coping, I think faith is a big part of my life and coping system.
Okay.
Having support system, family and friends that help you. Yep, we're going to be disappointed and grieve and figure it out, but then we got to keep going. So people who remind you of that resilience. And then just remembering to focus on other things. So,
Yeah.
of course, while things are daunting and extremely challenging, it's one moment in time. And so being on the other side of that and just being able to, it's not even a thing anymore.
Yeah. Right. Right. And, it's one of those things that, and I tell my high school students too, like when they feel a grade or they have to take an extra year, I'm like, when you get out of here, nobody's going to ask you how long it took you to get through high school, right? That becomes so far in the distance, but when you're going through it,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel that way because we have these markers set up. And if you don't meet those markers at those times, it can feel really daunting and shame, right? There's a lot of shame and embarrassment that can come with that. So I thank you for sharing that very personal journey. And to be in our field that, that's how you're able to move on to the next process, the next step in your career. So I can only imagine what a struggle that was. And I hear you name faith. I heard you name your support network. And how do you distract yourself, right? How do you tap into to other things? And it also connects back to this idea that, our work is not our identity.
Right.
And I work with a lot of youth artists, and sometimes their art becomes who they are. And we've had several students who, because of physical injury, can't do their art. And it's such a devastating piece.
Sure.
And so it's so important to think about your career, your path. That is just one part of who you are. So I really appreciate you sharing that experience.
Sure.
And it really connects back to, so I drop a lot of Maya Angelou quotes in this. So this really connects to particularly your last piece about finding other things, right, that bring you joy. One of Maya's quotes is, "In the struggle lies the joy." And that even in those really difficult and challenging times, it's so important that we find moments of joy, find times to celebrate, use gratitude, right? How do we name and show appreciation for the things that we do have? It helps to shift our focus on what we don't have, and can really be very powerful using gratitude.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So I want to talk a little bit about your perspectives on healing, what other suggestions, and I definitely want to talk about your entrepreneurship ventures as well. So I want everybody to know what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about, healing. What is healing? What does healing look like for you? What does thriving in the Black community look like? What are your thoughts about that?
If I had to summarize it, I think some key components would be showing up authentically. So being your true, consistent self across any setting. I think it has to do with living your truth, being honest. I think that honesty is a value that we deeply underrate and underappreciate. And so finding ways to communicate whatever it is that you're feeling honestly, make honest, wise decisions. So how are, your values playing out in real time? And then just helping people understand generational trauma. What are the things that we deeply love and embrace about our families and our culture? But what are the things that we also can challenge to leave behind and create new habits and traditions?
So let's break down, Jen. I'm glad you brought that up. So let's break that down. What does that actually mean? How will you explain it for folks who may not be mental health professionals here with us today?
Generational trauma?
Yes.
Sure. So one of the broadest ways to explain it is to start back to slavery. So slavery is obviously a traumatic experience for Black people in America, but each generation gradually got further and further away from that. But it didn't necessarily end the traumatic experiences. So from slavery turned Black codes and Jim Crow laws, and racism obviously is still something that we're battling with. So each generation obviously experiences a trauma, but then also because of that trauma, that informs how we navigate relationships, decision making, how we show up in our communities. And so I think that each generation carries a little bit or a lot of it of trauma as a result of our experiences. And that's one example. There are other types of generational trauma that individual families have that could be tied to abuse or just other poverty-based situations. There are lots of ways that trauma can show up.
For sure, for sure. Thank you for breaking that down. And these, I think, are so helpful for people to really understand and break down those concepts around, so that they know, right? When it shows you, like, oh, that's what that is, right? That's what you was talking about. So yeah, so healing is being able to show up in your authentic self. It's funny, we had a conversation last week where we were talking about the state of Black mental health. And someone was saying it's hard to thrive when the environment is hostile to you, right? And so I think they're, and I was watching a TED Talk the other day where this one was talking about, don't bring your authentic self to work because they're really not ready for you. So how do you, it's hard, I think it can be really challenging to know where those places are where you can show up and be yourself, or how much of yourself do you want to bring into situations. But yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Sure. I think it's about figuring out support and safety too.
Yes.
We are the dictators of when we feel safe. And so how can you find your allies, share a little bit more about what your goal is in a given environment, and to have that support system in place as well. That's a huge part of moving towards authenticity.
Yeah. And I love that you saying being able to find allies. Sometimes I think, part of that generational trauma, we go into work and we assume everybody's against us, right? Because that's how we were trained and taught, and some people acted out that way. But how do we be able to figure out who is actually someone who will be a true ally, or someone who's there just ally in name, but not in actions? And I think it's really important to be aware, but also not to assume that everybody in the environment is unsafe, or that, they're out to get you. So, but I think that's some of the vestiges of the generational trauma and the racial trauma that people experience.
Absolutely.
Woo, all right. This is getting deep. We have a question from Debbie. How do you consistently be your authentic self in a professional environment when your authentic portrayal of self leads to being aligned with negative stereotypes, for example, the angry Black woman? Woo, Debbie went right to it. That, how much time do we have? True. I love that question. It's so important. And, I think it connects back to that TED Talk that I was, mentioned. Yeah, it's so loaded, right? Because if you show your emotion, you are emotional, or you are, you're labeled. I think it's really, really, I think coming back to kind of, really assessing the environment and finding those labels. I think it's, many of us, we put the mask on, we put the armor on, we put the mask on as we go into work every day, but that carries a toll as well. And so I always, particularly when working with clients, I say assess, like, is this an environment that is actually nurturing to you, or you're so stressed and depressed that it's actually not worth it to be there? And sometimes it's hard to see other options. And sometimes people may be in a situation where they have a lot of responsibilities, where it may feel really, really hard to leave a place. And so we look at, okay, what are the resources within that organization that we can tap into, whether it's with your HR or there are other pieces that you can tap into. So being able to, like you mentioned earlier, Dr. Jessica, finding out those support networks. And sometimes they're in the organization, but sometimes they're out of the organization that help you. I don't know if there's anything else you would add to Debbie's question.
No, I think that is a great summary. I think there are so many things at play because there's a difference between if it's a peer, a lateral sort of relationship, and then is it a superior who is, embodying and enabling these sort of unhealthy stereotypes. And so having support systems to help you navigate that as well is really important.
Yeah, great. Excellent. So thank you. I want to make sure that we get to some of the pieces, but I'd love for you to share a little bit about some of the entrepreneurial ventures that you have launched recently.
Sure. So I am, like you said earlier, almost fully transitioned to individual practice from group practice. So excited about that. Thank you. I've got a t-shirt line on Amazon. So that became one of my self-care sort of coping skills in the pandemic last year. It was a way to still advocate and create, mental health community, but also a means to just check out and do something else that wasn't clinical. So that link is on my website.
What's it called? Yeah, how do they find you? I'll find it.
Well, my website is smedleypsych.com. That's the easiest way to put everything.
And can you share some of the themes? Because one of the things that I do encourage people is to create, right? How do you create in your work? So tell me some of because I think they're very cool. What are some of the themes that are on the t-shirts? Sorry, no, I'm putting you on the spot.
No, you're good. So obviously a Black mental health professional. So a lot of it is promoting Black mental health. Self-care is a big part of what I like to promote. And some are just fun, sort of catchy things. I've got a couple educational things on there. So it's a variety.
Nice. Awesome. Excellent. Then what else do you have? You have a blog?
Yes. So I do have a blog, Dr. Jess on Black Stress. Working on minimum monthly pieces to start. And then I have a pending project. It's a guided journal. So a lot of people say, okay, I want a journal. I don't know what this journaling thing is about. But I don't really know what to start or what to write about. And I think we get caught in overthinking. So I created a guided journal for Black girls.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'll let you know when that's.
What ages?
I could see it being sort of a late adolescence through mid-adulthood. I kind of kept it generally enough to address a variety of ages and issues. So
that's great. That's great. Yeah. Love it. Jessica said she loves it. Sounds amazing. I think she's ready to order.
I'll let you know when that comes available.
I know. So I know some of you know I created the Sweet Spot cards last year in the spring, and that was similar to you, like really wanting to help people find ways to tap into emotional well-being and have prompts and quotes. And we have a journal coming out too, but it's not self-guided. Which I think there's so much because I want to put so much work into it. So I can just imagine your process, wanted to get it just right. So that's awesome. I love it. Anything else?
That's enough for now.
So one last thing. So what is your to-go self-care strategy?
Usually it's working out.
Okay.
It's some sort of physical something. And it's been hard because I was an athlete. And so I always spent my time in the gym. And so now, the gym, I've been a little hesitant. So trying to do something, whether walking or I have a bench and some free weights here in the house. And so trying to keep it moving that way.
They're not, my weights in the house, they're not as fun as the ones at the gym though.
No, I agree.
But you know what? It's funny. I used to make fun of my mom because she would, whenever she'd come visit, she loved walking and she would go out for like hours. And I'm like, I don't get it. But now I do. And I love walking. I'll go admire people's gardens. I look at houses. I don't even have music on. I'm just like trying to be present in the moment with nature. But when there's some hills in my neighborhood, so I always find a hill. So I, at least I feel like I'm sweating it out a little bit. But
Yeah.
I really love, and I'd never thought I would say, because I'm like, I need my exercise to be like hard and like sweating it out. But I really enjoy the different pace. And folks, feel free to share your self-care strategies, because I think part of this community is about learning from each other and supporting each other and giving each other tips of what you've done and what works for you. So anything else just before? So the other thing, we're gonna show our the InnoPsych video now, but Dr. Jessica is also featured in the video. So you might want to add actor on your resume. All right. So anything else before we transition?
No, I just always like to remind people to give yourselves and give each other grace.
Yeah, love it. Love it. So thank you so much for being a part of our Thriving Thursdays conversation. I do want, if anyone has a question for Dr. Jessica, I'd love to open it. That's part of our routine. So if there are any questions that people have, feel free to jump in while I make the switch from this to showing the video. And again, part of, a lot of my, again, I always say like, I'm not a creative, but I think having these conversations and seeing the light that gets turned on for people when they can engage about mental health has just inspired me to think about, okay, what else can we do? How else can we make it like so people can tap into this mental wellness piece? So that's how the video, Jessica, who is the producer and editor and co-writer of the script, she says I'm a creative. I'll let you tell me that I can, it's like that ally thing. You can't name yourself an ally, but someone else can name you that. I'll let you name me the creative, Jessica. So let's transition into that. Yeah. And you guys are the first audience to see the full video. So, oops, there we go. You know what? Let me pause 1 second, because can you guys see it? No, so I realize that doesn't work when I do it that way. So let's share sound. All right, can you guys see? Can you guys see it? Yes, okay. And then we'll play.
Hey sis.
What's up, bro?
Hey, do you have a minute? Okay, I am going to get a little personal. I know I don't know you like that, but I have to ask.
Do you have a therapist?
I know. Therapy can be complicated, but you know what? I'm a therapist.
Psychologist.
Psychiatrist.
Mental health counselor.
Social worker.
I want you to know that even though therapy was not made for us, it doesn't mean that we can't make it work for us.
I want you to go somewhere where you can reflect.
Process and examine those wounds. Identify those triggers.
And learn new ways of coping. A place that is just for you.
You are the caregivers, the providers, the protectors. You put everyone before you.
You forget that it is difficult to pour from an empty cup, but you keep pouring anyway.
No more, okay? It's time to pour back into you.
Because you are
sorry.
worth it.
And you can come see a therapist even if there's nothing wrong.
In the same way that you may get an annual physical.
See a dentist.
Or get your weekly line.
Oops, sorry. Ah,
Hey, Dr. J.
yes.
I mean, I don't want to interrupt. I apologize, but a lot of the gray block was covering most of it.
Okay, so is it the block gone now?
Well, yeah, if you press play.
What's up, bro?
Is it gone?
Yep.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that. All right, let's go.
Hey, sis.
What's up, bro?
Hey, do you have a minute? Okay. I am going to get a little personal. I don't know you like that, but I have to ask.
Do you have a therapist?
I know. Therapy can be complicated. But you know what? I'm a therapist.
Psychologist.
Psychiatrist.
Mental health counselor.
Social worker.
I want you to know that even though therapy was not made for us, it doesn't mean that we can't make it work for us.
I want you to go somewhere where you can reflect.
Process and examine those wounds. Identify those triggers.
And learn new ways of coping. A place that is just for you.
You are the caregivers, the providers, the protectors. You put everyone before you.
You forget that it is difficult to pour from an empty cup, but you keep pouring anyway.
No more, okay? It's time to pour back into you.
Because you are worth it.
And you can come see a therapist even if there's nothing wrong.
In the same way that you may get an annual physical.
See a dentist.
Or get your weekly lineup.
We also need to take care of our mental health.
It is time that we step into the phenomenal beings that we are meant to be.
It's time to do more than just survive.
It's time to thrive.
Now, let me hear you say, it's my time to thrive.
It's my time to thrive.
Now go get you a therapist.
We're here for you.
We're here for us.
Personal.
All right. What do you guys think? I get some claps. You guys can unmute. You guys can unmute. I'm the
really
one
nice.
Thank you. I'm the one in a movie theater. I'll be talking through stuff, so you guys can unmute.
That was really nice. I liked it.
Thank you, Roberta. Thank
Yes.
you. Yes, we will definitely share the link, and please help spread the word. We want it to go viral, so make sure everybody and get it in the hands of teenagers. Great. There is a shorter version. We have a 1-minute version as well, so that's a little shorter. Thank you for that question. So yeah, I will definitely. You know what? I can share the links. You give me 1 second. I can share the links with you. Yeah. Let's see. I think, yeah. So any questions or comments before we wrap up? Somebody is muted.
Oh.
Okay. Yes, so I will share the links in for everyone. And so, next week we have LaTanya Tolan come in. She is the founder and CEO of Soul Care for Black Clinicians. So another wonderful conversation. And then in March, we're going to continue because March is Social Work Month. So we have the president of the National Association of Black Social Workers starting out our first Thursday in March. And then we also have the local for Boston area social works association coming in as well. So we're going to be doing a lot of these community conversations. So feel please tune back into. I'll pop our links in the chat. Here's the short version of the video here. And let me get you the longer version. And then most of you got here, so you know how to find us on innopsych.com. But yeah, please continue to spread the word about all the wonderful initiatives that we have going on. A special thank you to Jessica Estelle Huggins, who is a former student at Boston Arts Academy where I work, and who was the helpful brain behind this project, who helped it really get off. So I came to her with this idea not too long ago, and she said, yes, let's do it. I was like, really? She's like, yep. And 3 weeks ago, yeah. And so we launched. And so this is what happens when Black girls get together. We create magic. So I want to, again, thank you, Dr. Jessica, for being a part of Thriving Thursdays, but also being a part of the My Time to Thrive project. I really appreciate all your support that you've shown and love, and giving it right back to you. So thank you.
Thank you as well. Appreciate your example in this field.
Excellent, excellent. That's all we have, folks. Unless you have anything, thank you again for joining us for Thriving Thursdays. And we will continue to have these very powerful discussions about mental health, and modeling how we can have them with our friends and with our family members. So I'll see you back next week. Take care.